Hello, everybody. This is Ghost Hunter 385. I am back with more StarCraft, another topic, and more commentary for everybody. So, today's topic is going to be about morals and values. Now, I can already sit here and hear some people groaning, "Oh, Ghost Hunter, why are we talking about this?" Well, to make a long story short, we need to understand where these come from. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Hey everyone, this is. Oh, why do I even care? What was I supposed to say? Oh yeah. As new tiers of abilities continue to awaken, you like what you. Oh my god, bro, this stuff is so stupid. Ugh, ugh. If you like this channel, dude, like it, hit the subscribe button, bang the bell, and oh my gosh, get a life, dude. Life is such a painful drag. Maybe you should do something better, like, oh, I don't know, maybe go skateboard, write some poetry, maybe light up a smoke and enjoy your life for once. Ugh. But my impressions inside here, let's talk about morals and values. Now, let's specifically talk about how they've changed. You go back about, 80, 90 years ago or so, and if you were homosexual, gay, however you want to turn that phrase here, the nicest thing that happened to you was you went to what they commonly refer to nowadays as, oh, what are they called? It's some kind of camp. I forget what the proper name for it is. But more or less, it was a camp to get the gayness out of you, if you will, here, to stop your homosexuality tendencies, as it were. Now, that being the case, when I sit there and say that was the nicest thing that happened to you, people will sit there and scoff and say, "Oh, that was the nicest thing that happened to you." Doesn't sound all those not that nice at those conversion camps. There we go. That's what they're called, conversion camps. Yeah, that was the nicest thing that they did to you. And if the conversion camp failed, if your family didn't care that much for you, guess where you ended up? You ended up in the nearest sanitarium, which was basically a prison for all the people who were basically mentally retarded, as it were. That's where you ended up for being homosexual. And if you fought back hard enough, you might have ended up in prison. And if you end up in prison, it could be a lot worse if you were a violent man or a violent woman. Trust me, conversion camps were the lesser evil here, but evil no less. Then we could go on about the whole voting rights thing. And the thing that no one talks about when it comes to the voting rights was that suffrage in England happened sooner than it happened in the United States. Yes. But the thing that a lot of people forget is that voting had always been tied to land ownership. And why is it, is it, blah, 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 blah. Why is it tied to that? Because basically, in a nutshell, it has more to do with the fact that if you own a piece of land and you are invested in the land, you're more likely to think about who you're voting for. I mean, that's the logic behind it. Does it mean it's stuck that well? No. But still. The point here is that morals and values change depending upon the time, who's in power, and everything else. Now, those examples I gave about homosexuality and the voting rights, that's all factual. You could look it up. I mean, it wasn't the last mental health man. It wasn't. It's not the newest one. It was the one before that. I forget the name of the mental health manual is called off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. But it still had homosexuality up until believe the last change in it as a form of mental health issue, basically. You don't believe me? Look it up. Anything that you don't believe me about, just look it up. I wish I was making some of this stuff up, because then it would actually be ridiculously sad that I would be saying these things. But no, these are all things that used to be true and aren't so much true any dang more. Sad and disgusting, really, but still. Now, people will sit there and say, okay, Ghost Hunter, you've made your point about how morals and values change. But how do they change? Well, the answer to that is straightforward. Values change when people want them to change. Now, am I talking people on the grand scale here? No. Yet. Not that. Values change when people want them to, or those who have enough power, money, and influence want them to change. I mean, when you think about it, the gay bashers of the 80s and the 90s, what's going on right now is basically what they were all afraid of happening, was that the gays are coming for your children. The gays are coming for your children. And that was actually something that was said. And people sit there and say, oh, yeah, right. Now that, no, they're not. You know, X many years later, we're here, we're queer, and we're coming for your children. Happened at a Pride rally, what, maybe a year and a half ago or so, basically. Oh no, these crazy people were right. No, they were not right. But the one thing that they were right about is technically people in power wanting to change things, as it were, if you will here. As in, the powers that be want change, so they're gonna try and do this, that, and the other thing. Now, with that being said, how are values changed? You can go look at gay rights, you can go look at this, you can go look at that, and blubbity, blubbity, blah. The point is that it takes time, money, and a whole heck of a lot of influence peddling to want things to change. I mean, if you want the black rights example here, think about Rosa Parks here for a minute. Rosa Parks had to sit on a bus and refuse to move for a white person out of her seat just for the concept of some change to happen, to where people had to stand up and say, no, we won't be treated like this. And this is generally how change starts, is people stand up and say, no, I will not be treated like this, so don't treat me like that. Unless it's actually legitimately a crime going on or a crime being committed. And, it's just, how does this work out? How is this good? How is this bad? And blubbity, blubbity, blah. Look, the point is that for morals and values to change, not only is the need or want for change have to be there, but there has to be the push for it to happen. Now, people will sit there and say, okay, you gave the Rosa Parks example. What's another one? Well, gee, how many are there? I mean, we could go back to the suffragettes here for a minute and how they were picketing for the vote, and how more often than not the men who were sent to deal with them couldn't even vote, especially in the UK and in specific places in the United States. They couldn't vote at all. And that being said, you know, it's let's get back on the topic here. How are things changed? Well, I already gave you the best way to it. The best example is that money, power, influence. You need money to raise campaigns. You need the power to have to force people to call off those people who would come after you. And then from there, you also need the influence peddling to get people to on your side. I mean, if you go listen to the older crowd from the LGBT, the lesbian, gay, and bisexual community here, because I don't really like adding TQ plus whatever onto this. I still prefer lesbian, gay, bisexual here, LGB. But the point here is go back and listen to what the older crowd used to say. Just as an example, there's a podcast out there where they interviewed an older man who was from the earlier gay rights movement, and you know what he said? Children were not allowed anywhere near these drag shows. If there was a kid in the room, the drag show would stop. Excuse me. The drag show would stop. And then, and only then, once the kid was away from all of it, only then would the show continue. And that being said, you know, there's the sad fact that kids used to be protected, and then now it's called, oh, expose your kids to everything, and blah. And, you know, the moral and values of protect the kids is seemingly going out the window. I hate to say that, but there's a lot of sad truth to that it's happening. People sit there and say, no, it's not. Listen to the stories where you hear boys giving, what was it, like strip teases at schools, all for transgenders, all for like the whole transgendered thing. And you know, when I first heard that, I actually stuck my finger in my ear and was like, what? Because children need to be able to grow up first and decide things for themselves. And I do agree with that. People need to grow up and decide things for themselves. Now, with that in mind here, you know, it's just things are changing. Is that good or bad? Well, that depends upon who you ask. If you ask one person, is this change good or is it bad? Some will say yes, some will say no. And then there will be the blanket agreement, then there will be less agreement, and da-da-da-da-da. Morals and values change so often, but do they change willingly or do they change because somebody wants them to? And the sad answer is that most morals and values change because people want them to change, not that they should change. Now, I can already sit here, some people saying, what are you talking about, Ghost Hunter? That's such a lie. Is it though? Think about that for a minute. How do values change in the first place? Take the Rosa Parks, for example. Black people used to be treated very much as second class citizens, especially way more nastily in the Jim Crow South. And ultimately, it was black people standing up saying no more, and then also people who are Caucasian standing up and saying, do we really treat our fellow man, our fellow human like this? Is this okay? No. This goes against all of the teachings in the Bible. It goes against this. It goes against that. Da 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 da. Change happens when people want it to. Change happens when there is influence, money, and power behind it. And more often than not, that often comes from the people who are pushing it, or people who want the change because it benefits them. Now we're going to hear some people saying, what do you mean it benefits them? How does some gay man or some lesbian woman benefit anybody? Well, gee. What is the cui bono? Who benefits? Does government benefit from these people running around doing this kind of thing? Not really. Do big corporations who benefit by money this, money that, oh, we support these people, do they benefit? A little. Not heavily, but they still benefit a little. The point here is that when change happens, it's normally comes from someone who wants to benefit from that change, whatever that change may be, or whatever it may cause. And, think about the whole transgendered issue, and, why are so many of these people protected? Now, people sit there and say transgendered people aren't protected. They're still discriminated against. Okay, then why are transgendered books, drag queens, and other things being allowed to come into schools on the East Coast and in certain states on the West Coast and allowed to teach this stuff, basically? And it basically boils down to who benefits. I mean, according to what certain news reports, independent news reports have found that, I don't know if he's still AG, but he was nominated to the Supreme Court under Obama, and basically Judge Merrick Garland was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Obama, and last time I don't know if he still is the acting AG for President Biden here, mind you, but still, Merrick Garland was found that his daughter was a part of companies that benefited pushing this whole LGBTQ plus narrative, and even Merrick Garland's DOJ were going after parents who said, no, we don't like this. No, we don't want our kids exposed to this. Yet his family was making buttloads by supporting this cause. Now, that's just an example of who benefits. Who benefited from pushing gay rights? Well, let's see. Conservatives who are all Bible thumpers didn't benefit from it. Liberals who may have kept their beliefs to themselves and they benefited because it kind of helped bring in extra votes, kind of didn't. But the point still stands. Who benefits from what, and how do they get it? Why do you think change even happens? I mean, think about the suffrage vote. Why were why were women supposedly given the vote in the 1920s? Was it because women stood up and said, "Hey, we deserve this because we are good decision makers. We do this, we do that." No. According to what is seen from why women were even remotely even considered giving the vote, it was because people didn't want. Well, it's because, well, there's multiple things here, but the short idea is that was that Americans who were very much non-Catholic, they were Protestant, because you can go through the whole Protestant Catholic thing. But the point is that there were different religious beliefs because of the potato famine of the 1920s. And you had Irish and other people immigrating to the United States, and they were all Catholic and they were much more conservative in their thinking. So the Protestants basically gave the vote to women so that that way Catholic votes wouldn't influence American elections and blah 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 blah. That's kind of one of the things that's hidden under all the minutia here. Sweep it away, and what do you find? That interest groups wanting to keep their power have always shifted morality their way. It's the sad, sad statement, and it's a sad, sad fact. And it's quite disgusting when you think about it. It's pretty nasty. But in any case, this is Ghost Hunter 385 signing off.